I wasn't wearing the things, I would look ridiculous. I mean, I looked ridiculous then, but it worked. But it was all right then. So it's just growing up and gaining experience.
After years struggling with his appearance, it seemed Freddie had finally found the style he was most comfortable with. And as he moved with the times in terms of fashion, back in the studio, the band were now shifting direction too. During the recording sessions for 1980 album The Game, bassist and musical dark horse John Deacon demoed what would become perhaps the most infectious bass riff groove in pop, with the unlikely lead instrument given extreme close-up treatment in another no-nonsense promo.
John Deacon just pulling out these absolutely enormous hits that are so undeniable, but even the dad rockers in the band, you know, Roger in particular, I think, not a big fan of this disco direction.
I think within the group there's obviously a discussion as to, you know, whether Another One Bites the Dust is suitable for Queen. But I think as soon as they start playing and as soon as they start finding the groove, they realise that they might not all agree, but they know that it is Queen.
Freddie's astonishing vocal and wiry strutting in the Back to Basics video helped the funky foot stomper become another monster hit across the globe, and crucially, #1 in the US.
That's the power of Queen and Freddie, is that he could take a song that was not his at all and he could make it his, make it sound as though he'd written it, and he's selling it to you so hard that you think, he must have written all these songs.
It looked like the risk of throwing off their rock roots and diversifying into disco had paid off. Whilst humbly acknowledging the fickle nature of pop superstardom, Brian May looked happily back on this killer time for Queen.
We kind of became the biggest group in the world at that moment. You know, it's a fleeting moment because someone else will come and take over, but for that moment we kind of owned the world.
Brian's instincts about the volatile nature of fame rang true shortly afterwards, when the release of a very British, high-camp, tongue-in-cheek cross-dressing video would soon undo all their hard work across the pond.
I want to break free. I want to break free.
It's humoristic, and you know, and they never took themselves too seriously. Queen.
Red's a housewife pushing a Hoover, and they're all different characters. Roger, a very convincing schoolgirl. John, an old granny, and Brian, I'm not quite sure who Brian was, but it was great fun on the day, on the set. Everyone loved it.
The video may have been a hoot to film, but questions soon arose as to the motivation behind it, with detractors presuming the campness was all of Mercury's doing. So, with good grace, Freddie set the record straight in this laid-back interview down under.
It wasn't my idea at all. I'm sure everybody thinks it's my idea being outrageous.
Roger's, wasn't it?
It was. I mean, it came from Roger, and I was, and everybody thinks I bet. In fact, they asked me, so how did you get the other three to get into it? In fact, they ran into their frocks quicker than anything.
Freddie clearly saw the funny side, but in the much more conservative US, it was a very different story indeed.
America hated it, and the American record company said to them, well, can you do another video? Just a performance video or whatever. And the band said, no, I'm not doing it. And unfortunately, that video killed them in America.
Seemingly dead in the water stateside, Queen looked instead to a neighbouring continent with similarly huge arenas. But this was uncharted territory for rock bands, for then, understandable reasons.
The infrastructure wasn't set up for bands to play in South America. You know, you hear horror stories of, you know, people getting abducted and you know, kidnapped for you know, we've got your lead singer, you know, we want whatever for him.
Queen bravely took on South America in 1981. Roger Taylor describing his nerves before a gig in Brazil in typically matter-of-fact fashion in this enlightening interview.
I can remember being nervous the first night. Top tier alone took 80,000, and we were in this sort of dugout, which I guess the football teams would normally be in, but all the windows were broken. And I remember thinking, this is, you know, it's going to take